What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Payton Collier podcast. My next guest is an artist who has spent her life and career preserving the sounds of Western swing, honky-tonk barroom shuffles, and bluegrass music. Her new record, Ain't Through Honky Tonkin' Yet, is available now on all streaming platforms. She's somebody that I've looked up to for a while, and I really admire the fact that she has evaded the path of success through the mainstream and has instead shared the songs in her heart with the world and continued to preserve the sounds of traditional country music that so many people love and still want to hear in the modern day. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Brennen Leigh. All right. Here we are, everybody. Brennen Leigh is with us in the studio today. Brennen, how are you doing?
I'm so glad to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to have you here. You said you're a little jet lagged. You just got back from Norway. How was Norway?
Norway's a wonderful place to play music, and it's a warm, generous country full of color and great food and great people. I really love Norway.
I love to hear that. I think it's so awesome, too, that you have developed a fan base and a community over there of people that want to hear good old-fashioned country music.
Thank you. The Norwegians are an easy sell for that kind of thing because country music has been popular over there, I think, as long as country music's existed. A number of years ago, had an opportunity to play over there with the great Bobby Bare, and I found out that he had gone over in the 60s on tour with Jim Reeves and the Anita Kerr singers and Chet Atkins, and been on Norwegian national television. And ever since that time, he's been a superstar in Norway. So
really,
classic country is beloved of Norway.
Yes, God bless his songwriting.
Yeah, the wonderful Bobby Bare.
I'm very excited to have you on because I'm a big fan of you as a musician, but most importantly, when I have artists on the show, there are many different courses that a person can take in the music industry these days, and I think it's it's a lot easier to adhere to the mainstream and what the average person wants to hear. And I so deeply admire your musicianship, the music, the songs that you write, but that you have taken a totally individual, artistic, and unique approach to preserving something that people like me and a lot of people still really care about. So I admire you. I'm stoked that you're here, and I'm happy to get in the weeds about it.
Well, thank you, and likewise.
We can just dive right into. You played the Grand Ole Opry, and you did it the right way. You didn't go through the radio charts, and I think you should be very proud of that. How was that for you?
Thank you. It couldn't have gone better. They are the most hospitable, professional people I've played for. It dawned on me a little shortly after being asked to do it that it was kind of notable that we didn't do it from radio charts. We did it because, we play country music, and eventually, if you're lucky and if you work hard and if you do good work, they will ask you.
Was that like a goal of yours for the longest time where you're like, I want to play the Opry, but if ever I do, I want to do it the right way. I want to do it my way.
Of course, I'd hoped I would play the Opry as a little kid. I entertained myself by listening to cassette tapes of old Opry performances, people like Hank Williams and Minnie Pearl. So I was aware of it from a really young age. And it seemed like, a really high marker of that you were headed in the right direction. And of course, there are people that play the Opry because they're on a label, and it was the next logical step in their career. But it may not have the same emotional, historical significance for everyone that it does for someone like me. I was thinking about the Louvin brothers and Kitty Wells and Roy Acuff when I stepped in the circle. So I feel very blessed.
You just had a new album come out that is so good. Ain't Through Honky Tonkin' Yet. My favorite song on it is The Bar Should Say Thanks.
Thank you.
Which has one of the most seamless key changes that has happened in probably 50 years. Probably since He Stopped Loving Her Today and then The Bar Should Say Thanks. So is that sentiment more of being like a performer in the bar or a patron of the bar?
So one of my favorite tools in attributes of country songwriting is this idea of the audience knows what's going on, but the singer doesn't.
Dramatic irony.
Yeah. So it's almost the singer of that song is in the throes of what I call alcoholic denial. They believe that it's everyone else's fault. So they're getting kicked out of this bar at the beginning of the song, and they feel personally offended. How dare you kick me out? Everything I've done for you. And I've been and seen this person a million times. Someone who believes that their presence, their drunken presence, is a God's gift to the honky tonk and the bartender and the band. Someone in there just being annoying. And so I liked this character sketch of this person who thought, how dare you? You owe me. And I wrote this with my brother. His name's Seth Halbert. And we had heard a friend of our parents say the funniest thing. Just unrelated in passing, had said, the bar should thank me. And we both went, that's such a funny idea. So the bar should say thanks.
Yeah, I love that. The character sketch too. Is that something that you do a lot in your writing style?
Yeah, I like what you said. What do you call it? Something irony?
Well, that's actually the literary term for in a novel when the audience or the reader knows something that the characters don't. It's called dramatic irony.
Dramatic irony. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's in Ethan Frome, there, if you will. It's in all kinds of literature that I like. Now that you mention it, I didn't know that was a name for it, but it's in She Thinks I Still Care.
Yeah,
has that. It's on some level the singer of the song probably does kind of acknowledge this elephant in the room of like, wow, I'm a mess, but I'm just going to keep going with this until I hit bottom. And that to me is some of my favorite country songwriting.
And you also have a song on there called Running Out of Hope, Arkansas. Thank you for shouting out the home state. Anything we can do to stay on the map, we will. So I want to hear about that song specifically too. And if it actually came from being in or running to or from Hope, Arkansas.
We released that song and got a bunch of emails from Hope, Arkansas, and we got written up in the paper in Hope, Arkansas.
Home of Bill Clinton.
Yes, home of former President Bill Clinton. People wanted to know, what is your connection to Hope, Arkansas? And unfortunately, I had to tell them zero. I used to live in Austin, Texas, and so I drove many times from Austin to Dallas to Little Rock, or to Texarkana to Little Rock to Memphis to Nashville. And I always saw that turnoff for Hope, Arkansas, occasionally stopped there for gas. Well, it ended up being a song about being stuck. And doesn't have to even specifically be about Hope, Arkansas, but the town had the nerve to name itself that. We figured we could pick on it a little bit. And so my friend Silas Lowe and I wrote a tune about being stuck, being a convenience store clerk and seeing other people traveling and having to just watch them drive away.
Dang, it's so sad when you put it that way. So it sounds like the town of Hope warmly embraced the song.
No one got too mad at me that I'm aware of. I even had an offer from the paper to come, like they would show me Hope, and that it's not a dead end. And I believe that. I believe it's probably thriving.
Yeah.
But we picked on it a little bit, and I beg their forgiveness. I
think you're safe with anybody or any territory in Arkansas. Like anything that gets a shout out, people are going to go crazy for. I wouldn't be surprised if you get 1 million streams on that song within a year because of people in Hope, Arkansas. Yeah.
Well, I'm from originally, I was born in Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. And that's where I'm from. I was born there. My whole family still lives in the area. And we definitely got excited the one time we were ever on national news, which was,
for the wood chipper.
Well, that was of course, the television show and the movie.
Yeah.
And then when we had like epic biblical level floods. Oh, look, we're on TV finally. So yeah, being from a place that most people couldn't point to on a map, it's kind of nice to be recognized.
Is it just somewhere where like all the rain trickles down into a puddle town?
There's the Red River of the North flows between Fargo and my hometown, which is a town called Moorhead, Minnesota. And when the snow melts, sometimes in the spring, it floods, and it floods bad. So, but I haven't lived there since I was 19 years old. That's why you can't place my accent.
Yeah. So you could you place mine?
Yours is it didn't register, so it must be not too far from mine. Somebody that moved around.
Yeah, I always think I have a weird theory. I think you choose your accent. I think it is like growing up in whatever culture or community you were in, people latch onto a certain way of speaking for acceptance. It's just a theory. There's
It's
no
code switching.
yeah. Because there are people, I grew up in Cabot, Arkansas, and I lived there for the first 20 years of my life. And everybody I went to high school with talked like this and, spitting some dip into a cup. But I think I watched a lot of movies and, was doing a lot of accents and impressions and stuff growing up. And I was like, I think I just want to say the word how it appears to be spelled.
Phonetically.
Phonetically.
Well,
Proper.
We always thought growing up in Minnesota that we pronounce things exactly like they are written. And we kind of did, but we also rounded all our O's like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's gone now, but it's not intentional. I think my accent is Texas because I lived there so long.
You got people back home like, oh, Brennen, how's the music going down there in Nashville?
Yeah, exactly. I've asked even my mom and stuff like, hey, do you think I have an accent? And she doesn't hear it anymore. So my mom doesn't hear my accent.
So you said you were 19 when you moved from Minnesota to Austin.
Austin, Texas, yeah.
And why did you decide then that was the place that you wanted to pursue?
Well, I was already a working musician. I had been since my early teens. And my brother and I played together. We were both fascinated with Western swing music. Bands like Asleep at the Wheel and Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys. And we just thought that whole thing was so cool. And so we visited Nashville. I applied to Belmont. They wouldn't give me a scholarship. My mom wanted...
You didn't have enough of an accent.
I didn't. I guess I wasn't good enough at music. But no, that was fine. I think they would have accepted me. But I ended up doing a year of college in San Marcos, Texas, and then quitting because I was working too much. I was playing too much. So I ended up in Austin for 15 years, maybe a little too long to stay. I think I had intended to come here a little sooner, but I got so much from being in Texas, and I still go back all the time and play, and I work with Texans.
So you really think that's where you cut your teeth and made, or at least went from a working musician to Brennen Leigh as an artist? Yeah.
I definitely would have classified myself as a working musician in Austin because you probably know Austin it's not really a music business town like we are in Nashville. It's a live music town. So you could play, 3 gigs a day if you want there. It's a very, you can definitely work yourself, silly.
And probably without as much financial reward.
I was doing there, and that's jury's out because I have friends who say, "Oh, we moved back to Austin and we make more money." But I had an issue with, and I say this with all the love in my heart for Texas. It's harder for women to succeed there.
I've never heard that before.
You haven't?
I've heard that it's harder for women to succeed.
It is.
In places.
In places. In general.
Yeah. But I didn't know that it was a more difficult road in Texas.
And I have my people back there that have championed me from the time I was, since before I even deserved it, I have my people in Texas that booked me regardless. But it became a thread in my life that, I would just look at any festival lineup or any Texas music chart and the proof is just in the pudding.
All dudes.
It's very dude heavy. So I'm not saying that Nashville is less sexist because we obviously have an issue with that here too. But I think, and I've thought about this way too much, but I think that maybe the only difference is that in Nashville, we understand that women actually are marketable. And I don't know if they've chosen to accept that in Texas. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for saying it, but I did live there a really long time. And I did run into my share of venues that would say, we already have a female on the lineup for this festival, so we can't book you this time. Or women don't really do very well on weekends here, but if you want to do a Wednesday You can, that sort of thing.
That's so weird.
It's weird.
Kind of eerie.
It's weird, but some of the most awesome people are there. Some of the most awesome events are there, and specific, like my management is there. And I work a lot with Asleep at the Wheel. They've done a lot for me just as a band and just by association. So I can't really complain. I've had it pretty good compared to a lot.
How did you get introduced to Western swing in Minnesota?
My parents were country music fans.
Thank God.
And actually a lot of people in that part of the country are, because it's farmy AF. It's very farmy up there. Everybody's, at least my generation, our parents were at least kids of farmers. And so a lot of them listen to country, traditional country, whatever. And my dad and my mom loved to have little pickin' parties. And my parents had a record collection. And one of the records in there was this record called Fathers and Sons. And it was a double album that Ray Benson and Asleep at the Wheel made, where one disc was Asleep at the Wheel and one disc was Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys. And it was kind of the Wheels' attempt to expose some people to Bob Wills. Mm-hmm. So my brother and I learned every song on the album.
Well, probably a good time to say we do have a second guest on the podcast today.
I brought my dog.
Bjorn is here with us.
Bjorn's here, and he's, of course, refusing to talk, but he thought he'd make a little noise.
That named after the bear?
He is just... He's just named after... It's a Norwegian name. It actually means the bear.
I got it. I had to dig through the literary mind. Bjorn is a shape-shifting bear in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit.
That sounds right. No one has ever made that comparison with him, though. They always think he's named after the
Norwegian gods.
tennis player, Bjorn something. Or he's named after a baby Bjorn, which is like, those things you carry babies in.
Oh.
It's like a Swedish baby carrier thing.
I was thinking of a stork carrying one in a bag like an old cartoon. Or that's because I was thinking you could get him a sister and name her Bjork.
Or Bjork. People think Bjork. They always say, well, what kind of dog is she? And they heard me say Bjork even though it was Bjorn. Mm-hmm. But Bjork is Icelandic and Bjorn is Norwegian.
Well, I'm stoked to have him here. He's been super well behaved. So Asleep at the Wheel. So even me growing up in Arkansas, which is I only heard country music until about the time I was 10, when my dad thought it was time to introduce me to Whitesnake. But
is he helping pay for your therapy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I love it all, but I did not discover Western swing until probably 3 years ago or so, where I really started digging in it and appreciating it. And really what was my gateway was Haggard's Tribute to the Best Damn Fiddle Player in the World album.
Oh, that's a great record.
Yeah. And he's so good at singing those Western swing tunes. And I think there's 10 of them on there.
And he's got Tiny Moore and Eldon Shamlin on there, right? And so who were in Bob Wills' band, for those that are not big geeks for that.
He did that classic where it was not the tribute show or whatever, but it was like an award show or something. And they had all the Playboys out there. And Hag introduced them all. He's like, what made Bob Wills special was he liked to announce everyone after they'd say their names. And I remember just getting into it and learning about it. I thought there's such a spirit of joyful liveliness and camaraderie and fun in Western swing.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth when you said joyful, because that to me is the essence of Western swing. It's fun music. And it's, it's rightfully called a lot of times hillbilly jazz. It's very much swing music, but it's Western. It's cowboy. It's got the steel guitar and the fiddle. It's got those fiddle tunes. It's got the square dance influence in it. And yet it's sophisticated and moody. And I heard Tommy Duncan sing. And I think, honestly, I loved everything about it. I loved the steel guitar playing. I loved Bob Wills yelling. Mm-hmm. It's just totally, it's like listening to something from outer space. But then I heard Tommy Duncan, trouble in mind, I'm blue, with those, but I won't be blue always, that lazy kind of little sleepy way that he sang. It was just so controlled. And I went, who is this guy?
Almost like Bing Crosby-esque, or like that era of people.
Some of the same licks, you know.
Yeah.
You know that.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly have the ear for singing, because that's the same thing I hear is when I hear Dean Martin now, and this is how backwards I am. And like you, I was only aware of country music to a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hear Dean Martin and go, oh, that's a Tommy Duncan lick. Oh, wait a second. It might be the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's such rich, beautiful, happy music.
Well, clearly you have a deep level of infatuation with Tommy Duncan, so much as to write a song called If Tommy Duncan's Voice Was Booze, with the tagline, I'd be drunk all the time.
I'd stay drunk all the time.
I'd stay drunk all the time.
Yeah, I wrote that with Paul Kramer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Paul Kramer.
And we were just talking about how his voice, just made us feel. It's just so, it's intoxicating.
Mm-hmm.
What a wonderful singer. What a masterful interpreter of songs.
Did you know, like, by the time you moved to Texas, that you really wanted to pursue something akin to the sound of Western swing?
I mean, I liked it, but I had my foot in a couple of different places, of course, at that age. Because I grew up playing mandolin, so I loved bluegrass. I loved the Louvin brothers and Hank Williams and things like that. So I kind of I liked the Western country music, and I liked the Eastern country music. I liked both. But Texas seemed just like a special kind of free place where you could kind of play whatever kind of wild mix of that you wanted to, and I did. I played, the classic kind of 5-piece shuffle stuff, and I played in bluegrass bands there, and I played a lot of gospel when I was there too, country gospel.
So how'd you get linked up with the Sleep at the Wheel by the time you got there? Which are pretty much the champions of allowing Western swing to survive this long, I think, right?
They've definitely played a hand in that. Ray and the band are in their, I think, 53rd year now.
That's unbelievable.
That he's been doing it for 50 plus years.
He's such a presence.
Yeah.
Too. It seems like you two have a very special friendship.
I love Ray. He's done as much or more for me than, almost anybody I can name. And, the guy just stays young because he continuously is in discovery mode. He's finding new things he likes.
That's really interesting that you said that he finds ways to stay young. Did you ever see the 2018 film, The Mule?
No.
It was one of Clint's last movies that he did. But Toby Keith wrote one of my favorite songs that he's ever done, which I know you probably have some mixed feelings about Toby Keith. A lot of people do. But in that film, Clint is obviously old as hell. He's like 91. And Toby Keith, at the very end of the movie, there's a song that he wrote that's just acoustic, stripped down, none of the hey thing he likes to do. How do you lock me now?
Oh, man.
But anyway, there's a song that plays at the very end of the film. It's called Don't Let the Old Man In. And it's very somber and dark.
And he wrote it.
And he said... He asked Clint Eastwood, they were golfing. And
what a great title.
Yeah. And he said, Clint said, how do you find ways to stay young? He said, well, Toby, I wake up every day and choose. I don't let the old man in.
Ooh, that's so good.
I think you'd like the song too, because it's so different than the popular mainstream approach of, say, a red Solo cup. But I just thought that was a brilliant title. And you saying that about Ray, to tie all that in, made me think I think there's very unique people, many artists that we look up to, Bob Wills especially included, that just found ways to stay young. And even though they were burdened by the difficulties and the things that plague you in life, in the life of an artist, they kept that joy alive in their music, in their art.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of what you're describing is people who, and I have a special affection for people who just know who they are. And hey, buddy, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, you were all saying he was so well behaved, but he's probably getting a little antsy or something now.
Nah, I think he'll be all right.
People, people who know who they are. I have just a soft spot for him because somebody like Bob Wills, do you think, this eccentric West Texas, guy that, there's just so much about him that could have been seen as bizarre, and yet he just stayed who he was. And the same thing with Ray. He's always known, I'm going to play Western swing music. And it was in an era where people were not playing Western swing music. And it was just, I think knowing who you are is like the ultimate quality that can give you longevity. Because at certain points in your career, being who you are and doing what you do is not going to be the cool thing. But if you change what you're doing, you're not giving it a chance to come back around and for people to discover who you are. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, it makes sense. I was going to say the staying true to who you are thing, which is such it's something that I've struggled with in artistic pursuits. And I think it's such a difficult thing to really pin down in the modern day with all the distractions and everybody, all of us people who love Western swing are glued to their iPhones. Still it's so difficult to hone in on who you actually are as a person with all these distractions, I think, which is another reason why I think it's so impressive that you have persevered down the course that you have in a world that is so focused on distraction, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, it's difficult because, anyone who is going for it in a music business sense, an artist trying to improve their situation. We all know what an insidious and necessary evil. I'm
glad you looked at the camera for that.
Social media is because we've all had to adapt to it, and it's been tough on us because, I'm putting out records, and when I release an album now. It's so funny because 5 years ago even, this wasn't a thing. But now it's like I'll get a message from my manager saying, hey, such and such publication wants you to give them a few words about these 3 songs, that they're releasing on video or something. And I'm like, but I wrote the songs, so you're putting all this intellectual and creative energy into content. Like, okay, what photo am I going to use? Like you're putting all this energy into content surrounding your release. And if you're not careful, you're not creating what you're really supposed to be. There's not going to be anything left.
It's so meta, it's got to even kind of, or even this, the format of an interview. Of course, I try to make this more of a conversation between 2 musicians rather than just an interview format. But back in the day, you'd get a couple lines in the newspaper, maybe make a headline. If you were extremely famous, you might make it onto Johnny Carson or David Letterman or something. And now the format is real, raw, long form conversations in a podcast setting. That's how people really get to know artists that they admire.
If that is what it is, if that's the way we're going, like if people want to consume what I have to say in another form besides songs, I mean, I guess that's okay. The main thing is, can I keep making a living? So if something like me sitting down and getting to talk to my friend on a podcast is going to help people get to know me, and in a sense, I take some solace in it because there was a time when I feel like I didn't have control of what went out about me.
When was that? Like the early 2000s?
Early days of the internet being really instrumental in a musician's career. There would be people that would show up to a show, bless their hearts, and tape 10 songs on a cheap cell phone or something, and then put them all on YouTube. And the fans didn't know I wasn't putting that stuff up, and if a festival promoter wanted to book me and they Googled Brennen Leigh on YouTube, they would find some noisy, what if I was not having the best night? You just didn't have a lot of control over what went out. And now we have this technology where you can put out the pictures you want. You can put out your own videos. It just takes some discipline, and it can be very stressful, and there's a lot of pressure. But now I'm more at peace with the version of me that is in public because, hey, at least I had some hand in being responsible for it.
Yeah. But I think too, just kind of tying back into that, being true to who you are. I think about somebody like Elvis or Willie Nelson is probably the perfect example of what the first 20 years of his career looked like, and before he moved to Austin, and then how much it changed. And that's when he became the Willie that we all, that everyone in the world knows and loves today, is when he grew out the hair, started telling the truth about the weed, put the hat on and stuff. So, just your opinion on this. Do you think that he was being insincere to himself in the early days?
That's a really good question. I have no idea, but I can speak from a personal, I can speak from experience.
Yeah, that's kind of what
I love early Willie Nelson. I mean, I like all of Willie Nelson, but from personal, like in my personal life, I've been a professional musician since I was 14. And I released my first record when I was 18. Now, when you're 18, you don't really know who you are yet, as much as you want to believe that you do. I loved country music, and it's a country album, and it's nothing I'm ashamed of. It's out of print. And I made 4 or 5 records between that age and the age of, 35 that were like fine. They were fine. But at a certain point, I kind of hit this wall, and I went, to hell with it. I'm gonna just make something from my heart completely. And I was scared that it would sell 10 copies, and it was that record Prairie Love Letter, which is, I would say when I was making it, I was convinced there's nothing commercial about this at all. It's a record that's kind of an ode to my culture where I'm from, which is that Great Plains culture. People descended from Norwegian immigrants in the upper Midwest.
always comes back to Norway.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, that's why it was so, most people can't point to Norway on a map or, the part of the country where I'm from. It's a flyover area. And I was very vulnerable in writing about it because I was homesick, and I kept coming back to this idea of being homesick. And I thought, people in other parts of the country aren't going to understand this. They're not going to care about it. And it ended up being the singular best artistic thing I had done for my career to that date, because people accepted it and it resonated with them. And I got all these wonderful things written about it and all these letters from people saying, this song could be about me. This could be about my grandparents. And I realized I had tapped into this. Okay, you just put it out there, who you are. Ironically, if you put who you are out there for people will, it'll resonate with them and they'll come to you, and you'll have a mutual sort of artistic loyalty with people.
Yeah, it's like you tapped into the next level of the ether, almost of just you encountered such an honest and organic version of yourself that when you shared it with people, that they connected to it on a deeper level. I mean, that's art. That's the definition of art, and the effect it's supposed to have on people. That album too, wasn't it right in the heart of COVID?
Yeah, I put it out in that was another scary thing, because
June or something, right?
When I put it out, I was thinking, there was some kind of traumatizing thing happening every single day in the news. And I was like, is this a good idea? Or is this even going to hit people right? Because it felt almost self-indulgent to even share something that wasn't, COVID related or whatever with people.
Or Tiger King related.
The Tiger King. What would we have done without that?
Yeah.
But
your album was the musical equivalent of the Tiger King.
Yeah, I know. That's what I've been telling people. But funny enough, like it hit, and people were like, "Oh, we needed something to listen to."
Yeah.
And I just was really thrilled and humbled by all of the comments and feedback I received.
I think too, just the sound of that album, and the, like you said, that homesick, that feeling of, there's something very nostalgic about that album, and I think that was probably a feeling, an audible sensation that people were seeking in a time of such unprecedented uncertainty. Especially, I think it's the first track, Don't You Know I'm From Here, on that album, right?
Yeah. Yeah, good memory.
I remember when you came out with that, and it was at a time where I had moved. I'd lived in Indianapolis for like 4 years, and I'd passed the point of living there so long where it was like it had become my home then, and going back home to where I was from was getting less and less and less, and just kind of that sensation of going back there and feeling like people don't remember you quite the way that you were, and they don't know that you're a part of that territory. And so I think anybody that moves away from where they grew up and starts a life somewhere else and travels back home experiences the exact sensation that you describe in that song. It's definitely a very emotional, powerful song.
Thanks. Well, I think also, and I wasn't thinking about this probably when I wrote that, but, being a musician, this, the more you're in it and the more absorbed in the lifestyle you become, you have to be careful to not become kind of isolated from the rest of the world. Because I know for me, I feel the most at ease around other musicians, and it's because I have the most in common with them in a lifestyle sense. If I sit down next to somebody on an airplane and they want to talk about the music business, I generally have a panic attack because I just, to me, I appreciate the questions. I know someone's just genuinely curious, but I sort of close up a little bit because it can be exhausting and it can be hard to explain to people. And the longer you're in it, the deeper down the tunnel you are, the more valuable those people you've known your entire life become to you. Someone I've known since I was 6, priceless. That person is priceless.
Do you go back home often?
I try to at least go home a couple times a year. My whole family lives there. It's especially nice to go home in the summer. This
kind of a metaphor, I think it's more broad than this, but there's an artist named Hannah Dasher who uses it in a song, but it's like if you cut off the roots, the tree's gonna die. And I think especially with those of us that value our upbringings and our communities and families, that you've got to water that part of your soul a little bit. It's important to maintain those relationships. It's important to maintain respect for people that have invested in you since day one.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I try to never forget who those people have been, because there were a lot of times when it didn't look like it was going to pay off, for any of us. But you made me think of that, my favorite song, which is that Tom T. Hall song, The Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
You know that one?
No, on the podcast I do.
Yeah. He goes home to see his dad, and it's the one side of a conversation. And you're hearing underneath the sort of superficial conversation he's having with his dad that he is missing a lot of life. He's pursuing this thing. He's in a different club every night. He's making headway. He's becoming a little famous, but he's missed like his mother's funeral. He's missing. He didn't know his dad had a phone. And I bawl when I hear that. I don't think heard that song go by that I heard it and didn't get a little kind of lump in my throat, because he's just done such a good job of painting this. Oh my gosh. Like, I sure am glad I'm a musician, but dang, I missed Easter. I missed like kids growing up back home and old people passing away. Like, I've missed a lot of that. I hate that.
Yeah. Sorry. I had to pause for a sec. Because it definitely got me. Just you describing that song, I will probably never listen to it. But yeah, when you choose this life, and not just this life, but anytime you leave home to break the norm and pursue something that's really, important to you. I feel like there are a lot of people in my life, they're like, you don't call as much as you do. And of course, this, it's talked about plenty in your new album, but when you're honky tonking, when you're woodshedding, when you're really on the path, like trying to get something, you do have to sacrifice a lot in your social sphere. And it's not that you don't care and that you don't love these people. It's just you got to fight. You're fighting for something, you know. And I have friends that I've known, like those 6-year-old people that love their 9-to-5 desk jobs, and they are very happy to know that they have 401k and where their livelihood is going to be coming from. But some of us are just squirmers, got to get out there and explore the world and have these experiences and shut down countless honky tonks and, you know, get kicked out. And,
go to a new place every day. I mean, that's the travel of it.
Don't let the old man in.
Don't let the old man. And that's why you meet old musicians who are like 15. You know what I mean? Like somebody like, I always think about Bill Kirchen. You know who he is?
I do not.
He's a guitar player in Austin. He's a wonderful artist, songwriter, but he probably is most famous for being the guitar player for Commander Cody. So that famous guitar part on Hot Rod Lincoln, that's Bill Kirchen. Well,
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. He's one of the most youthful people I know. And that's probably by design. It might just be his personality, but you know, for me, it's a fine line. I think we age ourselves and we stay young, kind of in the same stroke.
Yeah. Willie too is a perfect example of that. I was just telling her the other day that he originally wrote Crazy as Stupid.
I heard that too.
Stupid.
What do you think?
Stupid for me.
I think it would have been as big of a hit. Stupid.
I think there's just something about the consonant of the
I'm
hard.
stupid for feeling so lonely.
Stupid.
Yeah.
I'm stupid for being stupid.
It is kind of a stupid sounding word.
It is. I think crazy. I just think I'm a big. I love Shakespeare. I love the way consonants work together.
Yeah.
That iambic pentameter, just the way words can da 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 da. And I think all the great writers are like that. But I just think that just something about the C and the R right there on Crazy is just totally sells.
Man, you said iambic pentameter, and it made me think of the very end of Crazy because
It's a perfect example.
it is, isn't it?
And also, I don't know if you know any musical theater at all.
You're exposing me, but I'm afraid so.
Really?
I mean, I was in theater in high school.
I was a musical theater major in college.
You probably know more than I do, but I was in Godspell, Grease. My goodness, what else was I in? Wizard of Oz.
So earlier today, you texted me and asked if you were going to be performing any songs, and I said no. We'll probably just chat. But after learning about your Wizard of Oz performance,
one of the most wonderful, some of the most wonderful songs ever written in history were in that.
Oh, I was hammered like a couple months ago. She drove home after the gig, and I am sitting with my guitar at the table. I'm like, like tears welling in my eyes, reading the lyrics to "If I Only Had a Heart." Oh my God, it just got me again. But
they're so well written.
Yeah, but
hey, somewhere on my Instagram page is me doing "If I Only Had a Brain."
Really,
with a tenor guitar.
Yeah, I think those, because they're the same song essentially.
I see you getting emotional, and I love this.
I can't listen to like Dean Dillon sing his own songs. I can't. I'd much throw the George Strait on. I'm fine.
But if it's Dean Dillon,
it's just something else. Like when he's singing Miami, it is so sad but hopeful. Anyway, but that the sentiment of that. If I Only Had a Heart.
That you're getting me right now, just talking
if
about
you know
that.
the lyrics, I mean, if you appreciate poetry, if you appreciate the human condition in the form of language and music, I mean, this stuff will sneak up out the bushes on you.
You know, the brain
like
version,
a new Morgan Wallen song, just sneak up out the bushes on you.
And then you're dead. But the piece of that one, the "If I Only Had a Brain," I can't recall the heart one. I mean, I know it's the same melody, and I don't know all the words, but in the brain one, he says at the very end, oh gosh, how does it go? I'd deserve you and be even worthier of you.
Yeah.
If I only had a brain, like this is this a song about feeling inferior because you're not in touch with something intellectually that you wish you were? I mean, am I overthinking that as a person in 2023? Because to me, that really, I'd even be worthy of you. Like,
Deserve you.
Yes.
Wortherve you.
that kills
It's kind
me.
of like, what is that? Fred Astaire. You say either. I say either. You know that song? Let's call the whole thing off.
Let's call the whole thing off.
But, oh, if we ever part.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the reason I brought up musical theater, though, is because Stephen Sondheim is one of my biggest influences musically. I learned more about music and note structure, but lyric structure, because he's a master. He did like the lyrics to West Side Story. He did all of the music and lyrics to Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods, if you're familiar with any of those. And many of those like deserve ya, worthy of ya things.
Made up words.
Yeah, we're just like using language as an art form. And that's, I really just thought, and man, we're kind of deep in like writer's brain here, but just how the importance of consonants and vowels in sentence structure.
Well, and that meaning trumps rhyme, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Like if you, this is like a thing I like to talk to young writers about, because a lot of times people, when they're sort of starting out, they get really attached to, oh, I rhymed
orange with the door hinge.
Yeah. But it's like, but your meaning is lost, so like write your meaning first and then make it rhyme.
Right.
And somebody like Roger Miller might have gone, well, I can't make it rhyme, so I'm just going to make up a word, which I think is, in his case, a lot of times just incredible.
Roger can do as he pleases.
Right. Love him.
So you've got an album out. This is a long time ago for you, I think, a little bit, but Brennen Leigh sings Lefty Frizzell, the songs of Lefty Frizzell. And anyone that does a full tribute album to one artist clearly has a very strong connection with them. So I'm a fan of his songs that I know, through Haggard and through the covers and stuff. But you're deep in the Lefty Frizzell world. So what kind of effect would you say his music and songs had on you?
Man, the first thing that attracted me to Lefty was his singing, because he created a singing style. And what I heard,
the first country singer, right? Or he's
crooner or whatever.
Yeah, known for making the like almost, I guess, the country accent almost.
I heard that he would get bored with a note and he would change it. Like, something like, I want to be with you always. He'd go, I lose my blues, honey, when I'm with you. I mean, just had a mastery of his throat, and was so tender and emotional. He had a tenderness in his singing, and the record that I made, it's songs he wrote but also songs he covered, so it was really kind of a tribute to Lefty as a singer. But what an intelligent singer, what a nuanced, just, I could listen to him all day. Image
creator too. I say it's cliche to bring up, but there's nothing cliche about a great song. But one of my very favorites of all time is That's the Way Love Goes.
Sure.
And it's just that opening line, I've been throwing horseshoes over my left shoulder. I've spent most all of my life searching for that 4-leaf clover. And immediately you're presented with so much imagery. And I mean, your songs are packed with visual imagery.
Yeah, I like pictures. I like to show rather than tell, show people. Because like my favorite books do that. Some of your favorite movies, there's hardly any dialogue. It's just something like a movie like Castaway. That one just came into my mind. It's all scenery. And I think the human brain kind of grabs onto that. And, oh, okay, there's this kind of flower was blooming and this kind of moonlight was coming through. And that's just appealing to me as a writer.
Are you a classic film fan?
I like a lot of old stuff. Yeah.
Like you go as far back in Hollywood as you do.
It's funny. I had a conversation about this just last night, and yeah, some of that stuff it's not as palatable to the watcher at first, because we're used to all these pyrotechnics in movies and all
Michael
this,
Bay,
all this computer graphics and I don't know what you call it now.
CGI.
CGI, yeah. You have a lot of that now. But it's like listening to Jimmy Rogers. You know, they didn't have access to all of the technology in those days, so it had to be about the story. It had to be about the characters and the acting. I think my favorite, I don't know. I love, you probably love this movie. You like old Westerns.
I do.
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is one of my favorite movies.
Yes, it's one of the best ever.
It's one of the best
Wait,
ever.
didn't you post about that? Like,
Probably.
you did something, you were like answering a bunch of questions, and I think I was like, that's the best movie ever. Well, first of all,
It's a great movie.
James Stewart.
He's
like,
great.
He's the man.
That's the movie that made me like John Wayne.
Yeah.
And I wasn't actually like really into John Wayne. And then I saw him in that and I got it. Okay, I get why people like John Wayne.
I thought that as a kid. I remember my dad and my grandpa just saying that, you know, John Wayne was the most badass dude ever. And I remember thinking like, you know, that, you know, dude to dude, you know, that I was like, he's not that pretty to look at, you know.
He was as a youngster. He was pretty fine.
Yeah, he's no Robert Redford. But are you a Hitchcock fan?
Yes. I have watched the movies, some of the movies, but as a little kid, my favorite show, this is why I'm such a weirdo probably now, was Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
They're awesome. There's always some weird moral dilemma that makes you kind of sick to your stomach.
Just everything about the Twilight, all the Rod Serling Twilight Zone stuff there's such a feeling of eeriness. I think it's the first ever Twilight Zone episode where the guy's like walking around. It's where'd everybody go? You ever?
Does he get to?
I think he wakes up in bed or something, and he's walking around town, and no one is.
Does he break his glasses?
There. I just know that the punchline at the end is that he's in. This is so crazy too. I think it's like 61, maybe late 50s. But he's actually in an isolation chamber, and they're like running tests on him, or no, well, he's going crazy because he's in an isolation chamber.
He's in like a Truman Show situation.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, super dark and eerie.
I love those. So yeah, I love the old films. I just think there was a certain like level of creativity that people had access to mid-century, whether it was musically or with film or whatever, that was kind of exceptional.
I think that's why so many of us revere the artists back then. I truly think they were just better because they didn't have iPhones. I mean, you look at your screen time, and I like. I'm not sure if you're an Eagles fan, but I think about those guys and their harmonies, and watching their documentary and talking about like literally all they did was eat, sleep, shit, make love, and then play music. That's it.
That's all how did they fund their lifestyle? Was that after they became famous?
I think that's usually the partying comes in
later
with the money and
with the money.
Well, I think it's just because it's so unnatural to be famous. Like as a human being, if you think about
unnatural.
It as a creature, you know, like you're not supposed to be known by everybody in the world. And I think once you get that famous, you get Garth Brooks, who doesn't know he can entertain 80,000 people, but doesn't know how to speak like a human being to a person.
I think I'm already getting there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's in a weird way, it's like everyone in the world knowing who you are is the most isolating thing that can happen to you.
I mean, I'm not anywhere near that level, but I definitely feel sensitive and like I'm more aware of my introversion and like my desire to be a real human and just grow tomatoes than I've ever been. Like, okay, I'm just hiding today, you know, because you're in this like vacuum of hyper stimulation all the time when you're us. So you
just us,
no one else. And Clint Eastwood, and you want to step out of it, you know, step out of it. And, you know, I like to go to the grocery store and get stuff to make a pie and make a dang pie, because that's like me reaching around for something that's kind of basic.
Yeah.
And I have friends that aren't that way. They're just like, yeah, fame, you know, they're fine with it. I like to still feel like the same person I was when I was, 12.
Yeah, there's something so comforting in that. You said pie, and I started thinking about my Nana, who makes the best damn apple pie anyone's ever had. No
Oh.
one's Nana's is better.
That sounds so good.
God, it's good. Unfortunately, she's no longer physically equipped to cook, so
Do you have a recipe?
we got the recipe.
You're going to make her pie
We got
forever.
an iMessage. We're going to upload it to the worldwide forum. But I remember the last time I was at her house, and she's got this huge, the family's on quite a bit of land, and I remembered experiencing the most powerful sentiment of, God, I miss mowing the yard. And that's where I would.
People are going to think we're crazy, but I relate to that.
I think that child, like that you said, feeling like you were when you were 12. I think that sensation of like how exciting and infatuating the world is, and everything that you encounter in your youth. And I think we spend our whole lives trying to get back to that.
Yeah. I just try to get energy where I can. And, fortunately for me, I feel like my audience is often just full of bright, thoughtful, intelligent people that want to have a genuine connection. So if I'm at a show, I can meet multiple somebodies who are on the same kind of spiritual page and kind of looking for the same thing. And that gives me energy.
What about when you encounter people that aren't that way? On the plane, you said.
On the plane.
I was like, did you have somebody recognize you on the plane? Or was it a thing where they're like, oh, you got a guitar, you must be a musician?
90% of the time it's most people are wonderful. I'll preface this by saying that. Most people are genuinely wonderful. Every now and then you run into that person who's like, you gonna play a song for us today? And my stock response to that is always, are you gonna do my taxes?
Yeah.
Because they're just being funny. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to talk about it. And those people are lovely, but it's even talking to wonderful human beings for hours on end can be taxing, just because we all have our limit. So I want to give, I'm a giver. I want to talk. I want to hang out, but I will wear myself out.
How do you decompress when you? I know me, like I did. Right now, I'm doing Thursday through Sunday, 5 shows a week on Broadway.
That's a lot.
And if Brennen Leigh wasn't coming on the podcast, I'd still be in bed.
You'd still be in bed. Well, good for you, because I might too. I actually was laying down before I came here.
Yeah.
So I made some salsa today. Got a big tomato garden going.
Yeah, you're all about that. You would keep bringing up those tomatoes.
I know.
It seems like that's the new passion in your life
Well, to be honest, I haven't had a garden in like 5 or 6 years. And so finally was able to put one in this year. And yeah, that has been like a really big, good healing thing for me. So just like, farmy stuff, reading books, hanging with my dog, swimming, just like hanging, being a normal person.
I've always wanted to ask you this, as you are such a beacon of light in the world of Western swing and classic country music, but I do know that you're human too. So Brennen Leigh, what are your guilty pleasures in music that you are ashamed of? Do you got like a little, an NSYNC poster on your wall nobody knows about? Or
I wouldn't classify anything that I like as a guilty pleasure, because I think whatever you like is just what you like. There's nothing that I'm really embarrassed that I like. But I mean...
Okay, so maybe something unpredictable.
Oh, my goodness. Let me think about that for a second. Maybe unpredictable, but I think the last pop record I bought, this is embarrassing because it was a long, long time ago.
No guilt.
But was Amy Winehouse's record.
Really?
Back to Black. Because it's a great record.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2 kinds of music. There's good music and bad music. And that's just an incredible record. I listen to that a ton.
You ever bopped your way through a hip hop song in the van on a long drive?
No, I don't ever listen to it. I mean, if my friend put it on, I might enjoy it, but I pretty much listen to country music.
You like to keep to the code.
But that said, there's some days when like I have a thing for Sam Cooke and I'll just listen to Sam Cooke, or I'll just listen to Diana Ross and the Supremes. There's certain moods that where I can only listen to those things. There's also, there's this Irish singer from the 1930s named John McCormick that I really like. So I have some little off the wall weird things. I can get down to some opera sometimes.
What about more in the mainstream? Like, do you get down with a little Fleetwood Mac?
I don't. It doesn't offend me. I like them fine. I think no, and this is a funny thing because that stuff was so omnipresent growing up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, here's one that I love Creedence.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's one for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that stuff there was so much of it, and it was so ground into us by like our dad's generation that to me it just doesn't like. There's no novelty for me to like put the Eagles on or put on.
Right.
It doesn't really.
People are mixed about the Eagles, but I think you got to at least appreciate they were the best harmonizers.
And I like them. I'm just not going to be like, oh, I really need to hear the Eagles someday. Mm-hmm. I like the early Beatles stuff. I love Buddy Holly. I like old rock and roll.
You look like you'd be like, my favorite Beatles album is Rubber Soul.
See, I don't even.
That's the one that's got In My Life on it, but it's mostly like acoustic folky.
I like the really, really early stuff. I Want to Hold Your Hand. She Loves You.
Twist and Shout.
To me, that's the real stuff. Yeah. When they were just playing like happy rock and roll, and
I'd say Diana Ross is the farthest we got.
Is it? I'm sure there's something farther out because I'll hear some pop music and go, well, that's cool. But I'm not going to buy the record. I'm just not that into it.
I want to like you to be like, the most closeted Justin Timberlake fan or something.
No.
So mainstream that you don't even want.
I mean, you hear Britney Spears and you're like tapping your foot a little bit. I mean, some of that stuff is kind of irresistible. But again, it's just not like enough for me to buy the record.
Yeah.
I get real mentally turned on by like the Delmore Brothers. Like to me, that's like the hippest music you can. So I'm but it's just so accessible. The pop stuff you were referring to, it's so accessible. You hear Outkast and you're like, yeah, that's cool. But to me, it's not like I'm gonna go. There's so much country music. There's so much American roots music that you couldn't possibly chew through all of it in your entire life. So that's just the path I've always been on. And I don't know.
Okay. And last rapid fire, favorite highwayman.
Oh, favorite highwayman. By volume of how much of his music I've listened to, I'm going to say Johnny Cash.
Really? I am stunned.
I almost said Christofferson.
I would have thought it would have been the other three before.
You would have?
I really would have with you. Cash, for me, is the least artistically intriguing. Him as a person, I think, is incredibly intriguing. But I just mean he wasn't as much of a singer or picker as the other guys. And that's why, of course, Haggard's not a highwayman, but I think Haggard's the best to ever do it, ever, all things considered, because he did a little pick and a little song.
Like Christofferson was in the Highwaymen, right?
Yeah, he was.
So Haggard, Christofferson, Johnny Cash.
No, Haggard
Waylon.
wasn't. Is Willie, Johnny, Waylon.
Okay. So that's.
They asked Hag, and he said,
he's like,
y'all enjoy your little boys group.
Yeah, enjoy the treehouse. No, I mean, Johnny Cash, to me, I think what attracts me to him,
So you have a crush on him?
No, actually. I don't feel that way about any. I don't really feel that way about any dead country stars except for maybe Webb Pierce.
Really?
What a babe. Webb Pierce and my friends would say Roy Acuff, but that's kind of a joke that I don't really have a crush on Roy Acuff. Maybe Lefty Frizzell.
Yeah.
Kind of a babe. But no, Cash, what attracts me to his music is the versatility. Like, look at all the theme records he did.
You mean like the
He did like whole albums about he did a lot of Western themed stuff, like the cowboy. He did spoken word stuff.
Did a lot of Marty Robbins songs.
I love the gospel stuff that he did. I mean, when you can hear God in his voice.
Indeed. For me, is always like, I've always kind of latched onto singers that had a little bit more movement.
I guess I wouldn't be like, he's a great singer, Johnny Cash. I wouldn't say he's a great singer. I think he was a great interpreter of songs with just $1 million voice. You know, the voice that God gave him was extraordinary. He wasn't an agile singer like Lefty Frizzell or like Dolly Parton or like you said, Merle. But I don't know. There's something spiritual about his music I really respond to. I don't know. You believe the characters that he was, and you believe the story like "Give My Love to Rose."
Well, there's the they worship Cash overseas. Like he's the most famous country star of all time.
It's like over the top.
Yeah.
And this is a pet peeve of mine. People pay more attention to the persona and the machismo factor of a certain artist than they do to like the heart of the artist. And you know, that picture of him flipping off the camera.
Right.
I don't think that represents who he was as an artist, but people love that because it's so outlaw and it's so rock and roll. And
yeah, kind of like the Hot Topic posters of Johnny Cash.
Hot Topic Johnny Cash.
Yeah, Hot Topic. You know, yeah, that's kind of stuff you see. So what's next for you, Brennen? What you got coming up?
Oh my goodness.
Got any shows you want to announce to our billions of listeners?
In August, I have a run out on the west. I shouldn't say West Coast because it's actually all over, like Montana, Idaho, places like that with two of my dear friends, Melissa Carper and Kelly Willis. We have a trio kind of side project that we travel with.
The Tomato Garden Girls?
That's what we should be called. We've never been able to come up with a name. We've thought about we've tried, but it's really Carper, Lee, Willis, or some variation on that. And so we're doing a 2-week run out to Oregon and Washington State, and it's all on my website. And then I've got a couple shows late July, one in New York City, and then 2 with Old Crow Medicine Show out in Vermont and New York State. And then I'm in Nashville for Americana Fest, and I've got a lot of good stuff coming up.
Awesome. Yeah, well, congrats on your new record. Good luck in the year ahead, and thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me today. I really appreciated the chance to chat.
Same, and great job. I appreciate you with the thoughtful questions, and it flew by.
Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor it was. Brennen Leigh, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Payton Collier Podcast.
The bar should say